There's a decision you've been carrying around. Maybe it's the job offer, the move, the investment, the relationship you've been trying to convince yourself will get better. You keep telling yourself you're still thinking. But here's the uncomfortable possibility. You stopped thinking a long time ago. Your brain already chose. Everything since then has been an attempt to justify the choice. And if that sounds ridiculous, a company worth billions once did exactly the same thing. They predicted the future. They wrote the warning down. They had nearly 10 years to prepare, and they still walked straight into bankruptcy. By the end of this video, you're going to test your own decision against the same 3 mistakes that destroyed Kodak. No psychology degree, no personality test, just 3 questions. Answer them honestly, and you'll know whether you're making your decision or simply defending it. Let's start with the first. Don't overthink it, just answer. Have you genuinely tried to prove yourself wrong? Not, did you do research? Not, did you watch videos? Did you actively search for the strongest argument against the thing you already wanted? Because those aren't the same thing. Imagine you're about to buy a car, the one you've already fallen for. What do you search? The model name and the word review. The model and best. Owner experiences. Very few people search. Why people regret buying this one? Or former owners explain why they sold it. When you're excited about something, your searches quietly become your lawyer. Every article becomes another witness for the defense. Every positive review feels objective. Every negative review suddenly feels biased. It doesn't feel dishonest. It feels responsible. That's why almost nobody notices they're doing it. Quick test. Think about your own decision. What would I find if I looked at your browser history? Evidence from both sides? Or mostly evidence that supports what you already hope is true? If that question makes you slightly uncomfortable, good. Keep going. Here's why this matters. Most people think Kodak failed because they didn't see digital photography coming. That's not what happened. Kodak saw it before almost everyone else. In fact, by 1981, Kodak's own leadership had already concluded that digital photography would eventually replace film. They knew the business that made them successful would eventually disappear. Think about how extraordinary that is. They didn't miss the future. They predicted it. So why didn't they change? Because knowing something is true isn't the same as wanting it to be true. Every piece of evidence telling them film was dying threatened the business that made them successful. And that's exactly what confirmation bias does. It doesn't hide the evidence. It changes how much weight you give it. Now watch how quietly this happens in your own life. You're considering a new job. You mainly read stories from people who loved working there. You're thinking about starting a business. You spend hours watching entrepreneurs who made millions. You're wondering whether to stay in a relationship. You replay the good memories far more often than the bad ones. You aren't gathering information anymore. You're collecting permission. And once your brain starts doing that, it becomes incredibly difficult to notice. Because confirmation bias doesn't feel like bias, it feels like research. So here's the exercise. Open your Notes app, write your decision in 1 sentence. Now, spend exactly 20 minutes trying to destroy it. Search only for reasons you're wrong. Ask the skeptical friend instead of the supportive one. Read the 1-star reviews. Find people who made the same decision and regretted it. Don't defend your position, attack it. Then do absolutely nothing for 24 hours. If your decision still survives tomorrow, it just became much stronger. If it doesn't, congratulations. You didn't make a bad decision. You caught one before it became permanent. And here's the strange part. Even people who pass that test still make terrible decisions. Because there is another force that's even harder to see. It doesn't care whether the evidence is true. It only cares whether the answer gives you what you already wanted. That's where Kodak made its second mistake. And where almost everyone does too. You found the strongest argument against your decision. Good. Most people never do. But here's the problem. You can honestly examine the evidence and still end up fooling yourself. Because evidence isn't the only thing making your decision. There's another force. It's much quieter, much more personal. And if you're like most people, it's already decided what answer feels right. Here's the second question. If the exact same facts applied to something you didn't already want, would you reach the same conclusion? Take a second. Don't answer quickly. Because this question sounds simple until you actually try it. Imagine your friend wants to buy a cryptocurrency that's already gone up 400%. They show you articles explaining why it still has massive upside. They quote experts, they have charts, they have data. Would you believe those arguments as easily if you weren't already excited about making money? Now reverse it. You're the one holding the investment. Suddenly, every optimistic article feels intelligent. Every warning feels exaggerated. Nothing changed except one thing. The conclusion now benefits you. Here's a prediction. If you're thinking about changing careers, you've probably already imagined the freedom, the flexible schedule, the better salary, the version of yourself 6 months from now. Before you've even looked at the risks, your brain loves visiting the future it wants, long before it visits the one it fears. That's exactly what happened inside Kodak. Most people imagine executives refusing to believe digital photography would replace film. That's comforting, because it makes them sound foolish. The truth is far more unsettling. Kodak believed digital photography would win. That was the problem, because if digital won, film lost. And film wasn't just their product. Film paid the salaries, the bonuses, the factories, the shareholders. Every dollar digital earned threatened the dollars film was already making. Imagine running a restaurant and inventing a machine that makes restaurants obsolete. Would you launch it? Or would you quietly hope someone else waits a little longer? Kodak chose a little longer, then another year, then another. Eventually, the future arrived anyway. That's what makes incentives so dangerous. They don't make you lie. They make certain conclusions feel safer than others. You don't wake up saying, I'm going to ignore reality today. Instead, you think, I'm just being practical. I'm protecting what works. I'm reducing risk. The story always sounds reasonable. That's why it's so hard to detect. Look at your own decision. Why do you want this outcome? Not the explanation you give other people. The real reason. Maybe you want the promotion because you're exhausted. Maybe you want the relationship to work because starting over feels terrifying. Maybe you want to buy the house because everyone around you already has one. Maybe you want to stay where you are because uncertainty feels expensive. None of those desires are wrong, but if you don't separate them from the evidence, they quietly become the evidence. Try this. Open your notes again. Write 2 sentences. The first, what do I want to be true? Then underneath it, what do the facts actually tell me? Don't let the second sentence repeat the first. If they're almost identical, you've probably written down a preference and mistaken it for a conclusion. Now run the same test on everyone advising you. Your financial advisor, the recruiter, the estate agent, the influencer recommending the course, the friend telling you to invest. Ask one uncomfortable question. What happens if I follow their advice? Then ask another. Who benefits most? Sometimes the answer is still you. Sometimes it isn't. Charlie Munger used to say, "Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome." He put incentives at the top of his mental checklist because he believed they explained more human behavior than intelligence, personality, or even values. People rarely see the world exactly as it is. They see the version that rewards them for believing it. So you've challenged your evidence. You've exposed your incentives. Surely now you're making a rational decision? Not quite. There's one last trap. It's the one that keeps people stuck for years, sometimes decades. It's the reason businesses keep failing, investors keep doubling down, and relationships keep dragging on long after both people know they're over. It's also the hardest one to escape because it disguises itself as loyalty. There's one final question. It's the simplest one, and usually the most painful. Knowing everything you know today, if you were making this decision for the very first time, would you still choose it? No history, no money already spent, no expectations, no one watching. Just today. Would you choose it? Don't answer with your mouth. Answer with the feeling you had the instant you heard the question. Because that hesitation is usually where the truth lives. Imagine you wake up tomorrow. Someone erased the last 5 years. Not your memories, just your commitments. You don't already own the business. You never took the job. You never bought the house. You never started the degree. Would you sign up for it today? Or are you only continuing because you've already started? There's a massive difference. One is a decision. The other is momentum pretending to be a decision. Think about the conversations you've heard. I've already spent 4 years studying this. We've already invested $2 million. We've already been together 8 years. I've already built my career here. Notice something. None of those sentences explain why continuing is the best choice. They only explain why stopping feels painful. Your past quietly becomes an argument, even though it has absolutely no power to change the future. And that's exactly where Kodak got trapped. By the time digital photography became impossible to ignore, Kodak wasn't just protecting a product, it was protecting an identity. For over a century, Kodak had been photography. Generations had built their careers around film. Entire factories existed because of film. Whole communities depended on it. Walking away didn't feel like changing strategy. It felt like abandoning who they were. So they compromised. They invested just enough in digital to say they were adapting, but never enough to replace the business they loved. They stood with one foot in the future and one foot chained to the past. Eventually, the future pulled harder. Kodak filed for bankruptcy in 2012. Most people think sunk costs are about money. They're usually not. They're about identity. You're no longer protecting the investment. You're protecting the version of yourself who made it. Admitting you chose badly feels like admitting you were wrong. Your brain hates that, so it offers a bargain. Just keep going. One more year, maybe it'll turn around. Sometimes it does. Most of the time, you're simply paying interest on an old decision. Here's something uncomfortable. The hardest decision isn't changing your mind. It's explaining to other people why you changed it. That's why so many people stay. Not because the decision is right, because consistency feels safer than honesty. Here's the experiment. For the next 7 days, stop defending your decision. Don't explain it. Don't justify it. Don't rehearse all the reasons you're staying. Just notice how often you feel the urge to defend it. Because if you're constantly defending something, there's a good chance part of you is already questioning it. At the end of the week, ask yourself the fresh start question again. Nothing else, just that one question. If the answer changes, don't panic. You haven't lost 7 days. You may have saved 7 years. Now let's score it. 3 questions. That's all. Question 1. Did you genuinely try to prove yourself wrong? Question 2. Would you believe the same evidence if you didn't already want the outcome? Question 3. If today were day 1, would you still choose it? That's your score. Not your IQ, not your experience, not your confidence, your score. If you answered yes to all 3, your decision has survived something most decisions never face. Real resistance. That doesn't guarantee it's correct. Nothing can. But it means you've tested it instead of merely defending it. Move forward confidently. If you answered no to one, don't throw the decision away. You just found its weakest point. Fix that. Run the test again. Then decide. If you answered no to 2 or 3, stop. Not because your decision is definitely wrong, because there's a very good chance you aren't the one making it anymore. Your habits are. Your incentives are. Your past is. Think back to the beginning. Kodak had brilliant engineers, brilliant executives, more information than almost anyone else. They predicted the future correctly. They simply couldn't let go of the present. That's what destroyed them. Not ignorance, attachment. And that's why intelligence alone isn't enough. In fact, intelligence often makes this problem worse. A smarter mind can build a more convincing story, a better justification, a more elegant excuse. The goal isn't to become smarter. It's to become harder to fool. Charlie Munger built his entire decision-making philosophy around that idea. He didn't believe successful people won because they always made brilliant decisions. He believed they won because they systematically removed predictable mistakes, again and again. And again, not genius, discipline. So here's what I want you to do. Don't tell me what your decision is. Tell me something much more interesting. Which question made you uncomfortable? The first, the second, or the third? Because that's usually the one that's been quietly making decisions for you all along. Leave the number in the comments. I read everyone. And if you want to keep building a mind that's harder to fool, subscribe. Every week, we'll take one idea from history, psychology, or a great thinker like Munger, and turn it into a practical tool you can use. Because the biggest advantage in life isn't seeing the future. It's seeing yourself clearly before you choose.